In this video, I share with you all of these 3D printed props for a Jinx cosplay. But before we get into that, just want to share with you what the GGGGs are for this month. Each month, Bob the Polder picks some of my Patreon supporters to receive gratitude gifts. And for this month of April of 2022, we have the DM Starter Kit Terrain Box by Mantic. We have the Hellboy board game also by Mantic. We have God Tier The Borderlands by Steamforged Games. We have Spartacus by Gale Force 9. $50 to spend at Mats by Mars. 2 all-in pledges for the Tycho Starport Kickstarter. And $100 towards a crowdfunder that is still being voted upon. If you want to use my link below, go to my Patreon page and you can see all the details there. So in preparation for Anime St. Louis, which is happening at the end of this month, my daughter is going as Jinx from the Netflix series Arcane, and I was able to 3D print out all of these props for her costume. If you haven't seen Arcane, make sure to check out my review video for that show. I think it is one of the best animated series that I have ever seen, and video game adaptation as well. You don't need to know anything about League of Legends to appreciate Arcane. And even before I saw the series, I knew that I wanted to cosplay with my daughter some of the characters from that show, and she really wanted to be Jinx. And at that time, I asked her if I could just make her fish bones, which is her grenade launcher, because it's just a lot simpler and easier to make than Pow Pow, her chain gun. But she said she really wanted the chain gun. So that's when I went ahead and went online and looked for STL files. I know that there are patterns where you can use floor mats in order to make it, but the detail that's found in Pow Pow is just a lot more, and I didn't feel comfortable with my foam mat skills to make it out of that. So I found this set as well as a number of other STL files, and links in the descriptions below if you want to grab the STL files. And I did purchase this, and there are more options, and in all honesty, I have to say that you should probably not purchase the STL set that I got, because although it is separated out so that you can print out all of the pieces, it's not really optimized for FDM printing. And I had to actually modify most of the STL files so that it would print optimally on an FDM printer. So for example, a lot of these discs, I had to change the orientation so it was printing on the side, and also slice it off so that it adhered flat to the plate. Or even the orientation for the handle and the both handles, this in the back as well as the front. I had to change the orientation because when you're printing on FDM, the horizontal plane is what is weak, and that's what's going to snap if it does break. And in order to create the greatest strength for the forces that are pulling on it, I actually put these to the side. Again, I had to slice it so that it laid down flat on the plate. And I did have to do quite a bit of support work where you can see all of these rough spots on here where it wasn't flat to the build plate. And then finally, for these tubes here for the gun barrels, I actually didn't 3D print that, although I could have. Instead, it was just a lot faster to just use some PVC pipe from the plumbing section at my local Lowe's, and the size was a little bit smaller, so I had to create some spacers so that they would fit inside of this build. And then as well, here I did use actual bolts rather than the 3D printed ones because I couldn't get these to fit correctly. And it looked just as good just using real bolts, even though I painted them up to match the metal color from the rest of the gun. And then finally also, I needed to adjust where the shoulder strap clipped onto because the pieces were just going to be too weak and was going to snap under the weight of this piece. And so I used these eye bolts and stuck them in where they were going to be the strongest. Actually, I tried putting it here, but the strap was just too short, so I extended it and placed it here. And I used screws where I felt like it really needed some strength to hold the whole thing together. The back piece here didn't have enough surface area, I feel like, where the glue was going to keep it together. Overall, building Pow Pow did take a while. All of the printing took me probably maybe 2.5, maybe 3 whole rolls of PLA. And it is pretty hefty and heavy. But I have to say, this is a super cool chain gun. So I'm definitely going to be displaying this after my daughter cosplays. And overall, I'm super happy with it. Before we go on, I just want to thank folks who sent me the HOTO Drill. This drill is really, really cool, and use links below if you want to purchase one. This drill is really cool, and I used it throughout this build in order to both drill holes as well as screw things together. And I did not even use 25% of the chargeable battery that is internal to this drill. Comes in this really nice box and with all of these bits as well as screw sets. And I compared it actually to my workhorse Porter cable cordless drill and was pleasantly surprised to see that it had quite a bit of torque and power and was able to do some more rigorous drilling and screwing comparable to my Porter cable. So use the links below again, and thank you to HOTO for sending me this drill. Moving on to her Zap Gun, and this I found for free actually on Thingiverse. I like the way how the artist who created this gun split this back half so that pretty much this whole thing was printed without supports. This front half I actually combined and I printed it standing up like this on my build plate. Again, everything here I printed at 0.2 millimeter height with about anywhere between 5 to 10% infill, and that worked out super well. But this gun, I think, even though it isn't totally screen accurate, I think it looks good enough and was fairly simple to make and to paint and put together. And then I just got some gauze and just put it on here with a layer of glue. Same thing that I did with the handle over here for Pow Pow. And overall, I think it looks super good. And then finally, we have the grenades. And there are a number of different STL files that you can find for the chompers. And I went ahead and found this because inside these are hollow and you can stick in, I bought some LED lights that I can stick in here and you get a little bit of a glow, which I think is a super cool effect. And I like the overall design, especially for the pin. It's beefy enough that it's not going to break. I was worried with some of the more screen accurate ones that these pins would break. But overall, I really like this a lot. The only thing that I would say is it also needed a lot of reorientation on the build plate to maximize the way that these printed. In particular, it was a little bit challenging to put this top piece, this cross piece, and I found out that the easiest way is to actually slide it in through the back, not trying to stretch it out so that you can push it through the top. And then that went on really easily. And then I used these machine screws because the person, it looked like they were using metric screws, and that's a little bit harder here in the US to find. And these 8x32 by 1 inch screws worked perfectly to fit on the tops here where you screw these pieces on. And then I used these fluorescent markers, paint markers, and my daughter actually went ahead and put on all of these designs onto the piece, and that was super well. You can definitely use paint, but just found that the paint markers were a lot easier to use in painting these fluorescent little markings that Jinx does on all of her weapons. So Anime St. Louis is just in 1 week, and I still have to paint up Vi's Atlas gloves, and that's what I'm going to be wearing as a male version of Vi. But my daughter is super excited, and I will be posting videos of what happens at the convention with our full costumes. But until then, please like and subscribe to my channel so that you can check that out. And I have a ton of other videos showing 3D printed terrain. Sorry, I didn't do a build or painting tutorial, but one of the things I have to say is it's a lot faster to paint up these large prop pieces than it is miniatures. And so it was really satisfying to be able to do all of this painting in a relatively short period of time. So happy printing, happy cosplaying. We'll see you next time.